The night the stars fell, the world remembered his name. Elias Ward, a quiet engineer stationed on Outpost Ardent, a lonely human colony orbiting the edge of the Vega Rim. His hands were built for machines, not miracles, yet fate often hides wonder in the ordinary. That night, the sky above the outpost shimmered with streaks of silver fire, not meteorites. They moved too gracefully, too alive. The sensors screamed, lights flickered, and then, silence. Elias ran out into the frost-lit dunes, breath clouding under the twin moons. And there she was, a figure half buried in ash and dust, glowing faintly like the echo of a star. Her silver hair fanned across the sand, her skin pale as dawnlight, and her eyes, when they fluttered open, held galaxies within. She looked frightened, fragile, and regal all at once. Elias hesitated. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her lips trembled before she whispered, "Don't let them find me." The words struck through the cold air like lightning. He knelt beside her, pulling off his jacket and wrapping it around her shivering frame. She felt impossibly light, her fingers trembling as she clung to his sleeve. "Who's after you?" he asked softly. Her gaze lifted toward the stars, toward the fleet now fading beyond the horizon. "My father's warships," she said, "and if they find me, they'll burn your world to reach me." It was then that Elias realized she wasn't human, not even close. Her pupils shimmered like liquid crystal, her voice carried a harmonic echo, something no throat on earth could ever produce. He should have been terrified. Instead, he found himself whispering, "Then we better make sure they don't." He carried her back to the outpost under the trembling light of Vega. The wind howled through the metal corridors as he laid her on a med bench. She watched him quietly, studying his every motion as if committing them to memory. "You risked yourself," she murmured. "Why?" "Because you were in trouble," he said, wiping the dust from her cheek. "That's what people do." Strange light flickered in her eyes, something softer than gratitude, deeper than awe. "Humans," she said almost to herself. "You're not what I was taught." For the first time that night, she smiled. Later, as she slept under a blanket he found, Elias sat by her side, wondering what kind of being could flee from her own empire. Outside, the stars pulsed like distant hearts. He thought about home, Earth, and all the wars humans had already survived, and he couldn't help but feel that somehow, her presence would change everything. The next morning, when she awoke, she introduced herself in a voice that made the air hum.
"I am Princess Lyra of the Arendari Dominion. Or at least, I was." Her words carried both sorrow and defiance. Elias didn't fully understand, but he nodded with a kind of quiet respect. "Then, Princess," he said gently, "you're safe here. At least for now."
Lyra looked at him as if the word safe was foreign to her. Her lips trembled, her eyes glistened. "Elias, what does it mean to be safe?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "It means someone's watching over you. Someone who won't let go." Her breath caught, and for the first time tears shimmered in her alien eyes. Far beyond the outpost, the stars whispered of empires and vengeance. But for that fleeting moment beneath Vega's pale glow, it was only a human and an alien. Princess, two lost souls bound by fear, kindness, and something unnamed. And as the night deepened, she whispered into the dark, almost pleading, "Don't let me disappear, Elias." And he answered, "Not while I still breathe." Morning on Vega's frontier looked like silver dawn spilling across endless dust. The wind sang softly over the dunes and the metal walls of Outpost Ardent glowed pale beneath it. Elias awoke to the faint hum of energy. Lyra was standing near the observation window, staring at the horizon as if searching for something lost. She wore his jacket still, far too large for her slender frame. The sleeves hid her hands, the collar brushed her chin, and yet she clung to it like it meant safety. When she turned, her eyes shimmered, not cold or distant like the night before, but uncertain, almost human. You didn't leave, she whispered. I told you I wouldn't, Elias replied, stretching tiredly. You were still asleep. I didn't want to wake you. A silence settled, soft and delicate. She tilted her head slightly, studying his face the way one might study an unfamiliar star chart. In my world, she said slowly, trust is a weapon. The more you give, the more it's used against you. Elias gave a small, knowing smile. Then maybe it's time you learned the human way. Trust's not a weapon here. It's a bridge. Her lips parted as though she wanted to answer, but she only lowered her gaze. You speak as if your kind has no war, no betrayal. We have plenty, he admitted. But we also have hope. Sometimes that's enough. Lyra turned back to the window. Outside, the planet's twin suns began to rise, turning the desert gold. The sight seemed to pull something raw from her heart. My father wanted me to rule, she murmured. He taught me that compassion weakens the bloodline, that mercy makes you a fool. But when I looked down at your world from orbit, I saw people laughing even in hunger, holding hands even in fear. You build your lives out of broken things, yet somehow they shine. Elias didn't speak for a long moment. The air between them felt heavier than gravity, charged with all the things neither could quite say. Then a sudden alarm pierced the quiet. A sensor beeped, proximity alert. Elias rushed to the console, scanning the readouts. Incoming signal, atmospheric breach 20 clicks north. Not large, but too fast for debris. Lyra froze. Scouts. Her voice trembled. They found me. Her eyes flickered brighter, fear lacing every syllable. If they report my location, my father will send the fleet. You must let me leave, Elias. It's the only way to protect your people. Elias turned sharply, his jaw firm. I'm not letting you walk into danger alone. She looked at him then, really looked at him. You don't understand. They won't just kill me. They'll destroy anything that shelters me. You'll die for nothing. He took a breath. Maybe. But I'd rather die doing something right than live pretending not to care. For a heartbeat, she couldn't speak. The words caught in her throat. Something in her chest cracked open. The first fracture of a lifetime built on obedience and isolation. Humans, she whispered, shaking her head. You're such impossible creatures. Yeah, Elias said softly. But we make it work. He grabbed his pack, checked the rifle's charge, and looked toward the ridge where the signal flared. Lyra reached for him instinctively, her hand trembling. Elias, please don't. He covered her hand with his own. Hey, remember what I said? You're safe. I'll make sure of it. She wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself whispering something she had never said to anyone, not even to her own kind. Then come back to me. Her voice cracked on the last word. Elias met her gaze, the faintest smile touching his lips. I will, and with that he stepped into the wind, leaving her alone in the outpost, his jacket still draped around her shoulders. The first warmth she'd ever been given freely. As the suns climbed higher, Lyra stood there, hands pressed against the cold glass, whispering to the empty horizon. Don't let him vanish like the others. Please. Far beyond the dunes, something bright moved against the gold sky, and the war she had fled was coming closer. The desert winds were merciless that day. They carried the scent of metal and static, a warning written in nature's own language. Elias trudged through the dunes, visor down, rifle slung across his back. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of the heat, but because he knew someone back at the outpost was waiting for him to return. Lyra. Her name echoed in his mind like a heartbeat. The proximity scanner on his wrist flickered alive again. 3 contacts, small, fast, moving in formation. Drones. He crouched behind a ridge, heart pounding, as 3 silver shapes cut through the horizon, their wings slicing sunlight like blades. Arendari reconnaissance drones built for precision and silence. He waited, calculating wind and distance. Then, with a deep breath, he triggered his rifle. The pulse shot cracked the air, clean, sharp, decisive. One drone spiraled down, smoke trailing. The others reacted instantly, scanning, locking onto his heat signature. Elias dove behind a rock as plasma scorched the sand around him. "Guess we're doing this the hard way," he muttered. He managed to disable another drone with a lucky shot, but the third one rose, flickering with red light. Before he could aim, it sent a burst signal toward the upper atmosphere. His stomach dropped. They'd transmitted coordinates. He whispered under his breath, "Damn it." Back at the outpost, alarms began to wail. Lyra's fingers danced across the console, her alien mind processing human technology faster than its design intended. She read the broadcast trail, her heart sinking. The signal had reached orbit. Her father's hunters would arrive within hours, and Elias was still out there. Without hesitation, she tore the jacket from her shoulders and sprinted to the hangar. She'd studied the Terran scout skimmer he kept, the small craft he used for maintenance patrols. She could fly it, she was sure. Her fingers trembled as she activated the ignition, Vega's wind screaming through the open bay doors. "Hold on, Elias," she whispered. "You're not dying for me, not today." She launched the skimmer into the storm, the sky splitting into streaks of gold and crimson. Elias staggered toward the fallen drones, panting, sweat and sand mixing on his faceplate. His visor pinged again. Something fast was coming his way. For a moment he feared another attack, but then he saw the glint of metal painted in Terran colors. The skimmer. It landed roughly beside him, sand blasting up around them. The cockpit hissed open, and there she was, Lyra, her silver hair whipping around her like a banner of light, eyes wide and fierce. "Get in," she shouted over the wind. He blinked. "You flew here?" "I learned from watching you," she snapped. "Now move." He couldn't help it. He laughed, breathless and awed all at once, before jumping into the seat beside her. The skimmer lurched upward, engines screaming. Plasma fire streaked across the horizon as the first Arendari interceptors broke through the atmosphere. Lyra's hands tightened on the controls, the blue light from the interface painting her face. "They're faster. They'll catch us if we stay low." Elias glanced at her, then at the storm clouds above. "Then we don't stay low." They pushed the skimmer upward into the turbulence. Lightning flashed around them, wind howled, the hull shook violently, but the chaos masked them from enemy sensors. Through the roaring thunder, Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. "You should have let me go." He looked at her, so fierce, so frightened, so heartbreakingly alive. "And let you die alone? Not a chance." She turned her face toward him. Something inside her broke, a wall she'd built her whole life. Tears mingled with the stormlight. "Why do you care so much? You owe me nothing." Elias's voice was steady. "You don't owe someone to love them, Lyra, you just do." For a heartbeat, she could only stare at him. Then, without realizing, she smiled, small and trembling. "Humans," she whispered, "always finding light where there is none." Below them, lightning tore through the dunes. Above them, Arendari warships descended, dark and cold. Between those two worlds of fire and shadow, flew one fragile vessel carrying an alien princess and a human who refused to abandon her. And somewhere deep inside the storm, destiny began to stir. The storm had faded, but its echo lingered in the sky, violet clouds swirling like wounded spirits above Vega's dunes. The skimmer lay hidden beneath a ridge of metallic rock, cloaked in static shielding. Inside, the air was thick with exhaustion and silence. Lyra sat by the viewport, staring at the endless desert as if trying to find meaning in the emptiness. Her reflection, pale, weary, streaked with dust, looked almost human now. Elias sat across from her, fixing the rifle's energy cell, his hands steady despite everything they'd just survived. It was Lyra who finally broke the silence. "They'll come for me again," she said softly. "They never stop once my father gives the order." Elias didn't look up. "Then we make sure they don't find us again." She shook her head, silver strands falling over her eyes. "You don't understand, Elias. My father commands the Dominion's fleet, and billions obey him. He doesn't forgive betrayal." "Then maybe," Elias said quietly, "it's time someone stood up to him." Lyra turned sharply. "You think you can stand against the Arendari Dominion?" "You're one man." He finally looked up, meeting her gaze. "So were you when you ran." The words hung between them, soft but heavy. Lyra froze, eyes widening just slightly. She wanted to protest, to insist that running wasn't courage, but deep down she knew he was right. "I didn't run to fight," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I ran because I couldn't bear what we'd become. We were supposed to bring harmony across the stars. Instead, we enslaved worlds in the name of peace. I watched my father destroy entire colonies that refused to kneel. I begged him to stop, and he called me weak." Her voice broke quiet as falling ash. "So I fled. Not for glory, just to breathe again." Elias set the rifle aside and moved closer. "You did the hardest thing anyone can do, Lyra. You said no when everyone else stayed silent." Her eyes shimmered. "And now? I've brought my war to your doorstep. You'll lose everything because of me." "Maybe," he said gently, "but maybe I'll gain something too." She frowned, confused. "What could you possibly gain?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Someone worth fighting for." For a moment neither spoke. The hum of the storm outside faded to a hush. Her heartbeat, fast and uneven, seemed to fill the air. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "Humans. You give everything for people you barely know." "That's what makes us who we are," Elias replied. "We love before we're sure. We help before we're asked. We hope, even when there's no reason left to." Lyra looked down, tears threatening again. "We were never taught that. Love was a luxury, a distraction from duty. To even say the word in my palace was considered rebellion." "Then consider this your rebellion," he said softly. Her gaze lifted to him, fragile, searching, luminous. "And if it destroys us both?" He smiled sadly. "Then at least we'll go down fighting for something real." Her lips trembled, caught between sorrow and something like wonder. For the first time, she didn't feel like a princess or a fugitive. She just felt alive. Outside, the storm clouds began to clear, revealing a sky streaked with gold. The sight made her heart ache. The beauty of a world her people would have called primitive. Yet in its imperfection it held something her empire had lost long ago. "Soul," she whispered. "If my father's ships arrive, I'll surrender myself." Elias's eyes hardened. "No, we'll find another way." "There isn't one," she said. "If I stay, your colony will burn. If I go, maybe he'll stop." "Lyra," his voice cracked, quiet, desperate. "Don't ask me to let you die." She looked at him and her tears finally fell. "Then tell me, Elias, what do humans do when love means losing everything?" He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "We love anyway." For a heartbeat, the world stood still. The suns burned softer, the wind fell quiet, and somewhere deep inside her, in the place where fear used to live, something changed. Lyra leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his shoulder, trembling. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. Elias closed his eyes, his voice barely more than a breath. "Then we'll find a way not to." And as the stars began to pierce the dusk above Vega's horizon, a fragile kind of hope took root, small, defiant, and utterly human. Night descended over Vega's horizon like a shroud of molten silver. The twin suns sank into the dunes, and in their place came the glow of something far more terrible, the faint shimmer of warships breaking orbit. Elias saw them first through the skimmer's worn scope, massive silhouettes, drifting like dark moons, their thrusters burning violet. The Arendari Dominion had arrived. Lyra stood beside him, silent, her face pale beneath the faint blue light of the console. She didn't need the scope. She could feel their presence in her father's fleet, the pulse of their quantum engines humming in her blood like a haunting song. "They found us," Elias whispered. Lyra nodded slowly, tears welling though her expression stayed calm. "They always do." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she reached for the controls. "I'll surrender. If they think I'm alone, they'll leave your people untouched." Elias grabbed her wrist gently. "Lyra, you can't—" "I must," she said, pulling her hand free. "My father's wrath is not a storm you can fight. You don't understand what he'll do if I don't return." Elias's voice was quiet but firm. "You're right. I don't understand how someone could hurt his own daughter for wanting peace." Her breath caught. For a moment she looked like that frightened girl he found in the sand. Not a princess, not a fugitive, just someone desperate to be seen. She whispered, "He doesn't see me as his daughter anymore. I'm a symbol of failure, of mercy. That's why I ran." Elias's eyes softened. "Then don't go back to the cage you escaped from." Lyra stared at him, her heart twisting painfully. "If I stay, you'll die. If I go, I'll die. Either way, someone burns for me. Elias looked toward the sky where the first of the warships began to descend. Then let's make sure it's not in vain. He moved to the terminal and began typing rapidly, rerouting power to the outpost's shield generator. The system wasn't built for this. It could maybe hold for a few minutes. Maybe less. Lyra watched him work, awe and sorrow blending in her eyes. Why do you keep fighting, Elias? You can't win this, he smiled faintly without looking up. Because if I stop, then they've already won. The sky rumbled. The fleet began broadcasting across frequencies. A voice echoed, deep, commanding, filled with pride and venom. Lyra of the Arendari, you have one chance to surrender. Return to your father's hand or witness the extinction of this colony that shelters you. The words seemed to fill the air itself. Lyra closed her eyes, her lips trembling. He won't bluff, she said softly. He never bluffs. Elias touched her shoulder. Then maybe it's time your father learned what mercy looks like. Before she could respond, a blast shook the horizon. One of the colony's towers erupted in flame. Panic alarms screamed across every speaker. Elias grabbed his rifle. We've got ground troops inbound. Lyra reached toward him. You can't fight them. I don't have to win, he said. I just have to buy us time. And before she could stop him, he ran toward the armory. Lyra stood frozen for a moment. Fear, love, and helplessness colliding inside her chest. Then something within her shifted, a memory of her mother's voice, soft and defiant. Even stars must choose what they burn for. Her hands shook as she reached for the console again, her eyes blazing. Father, she whispered, linking her neural signature to the fleet's open channel. If it's me you want, then you'll have to face me yourself. Her signal pulsed across the void. Above the planet, in the command deck of the flagship Arendor's Crown, Emperor Kale's eyes opened, cold and ancient. So, he said quietly, my daughter dares to speak. Below, the sky split apart. Lightning from the fleet's engines turned the clouds white-hot. Elias watched from the ridge, awestruck, as the heavens themselves seemed to open. And there, standing at the heart of the outpost's landing field, Lyra faced the sky unflinching, her hair whipping like silver fire, her voice trembling but clear as she whispered to herself, If love is my weakness, then let it be my strength. Elias's heart clenched as he ran toward her through the rising smoke. Above them, the first warship descended, and the war for one woman's soul and one man's humanity was about to begin. The night sky was no longer a sky. It was a wound of light, torn open by the engines of the Arendari fleet. Shadows of colossal warships loomed above Vega's horizon, each one a floating fortress of flame and thunder. The ground quaked, the air trembled, and at the heart of that trembling world, Princess Lyra stood alone on the landing field, small, fragile, radiant against the darkness. Her father's voice roared from the heavens, resonating through the clouds like the judgment of gods. My daughter, the traitor who would throw away her birthright for a dying world. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper, yet it cut through the noise with aching clarity. I never betrayed my people, Father. I only refused to become what you wanted me to be. There was silence. Then, laughter, cold and cruel. You think your compassion makes you pure? No, it makes you weak. It makes you human. The last word was spat like poison. But when Lyra lifted her gaze, her eyes burned brighter than the stars. If being human means feeling, if it means protecting even strangers, then I will wear that weakness proudly. A sudden flash, a beam of white light descended, searing the sand where she stood. Elias appeared through the smoke, dragging his damaged arm, breathing hard, face streaked with ash. Lyra! He shouted, shielding her as the blast faded. You're not doing this alone. She turned, horror and love crashing together in her chest. Elias, you shouldn't be here. He smiled through the soot. Yeah, people keep telling me that. Another blast split the air. He pulled her behind a metal barrier. The two huddled close as energy rained down around them. Above, the fleet's command ship lowered, the flagship Arendor's Crown. Its hull shimmered with golden sigils like a god descending to smite the ground. And then, a figure appeared in the beam of light, Emperor Kale. He descended in a storm of gravity and light, his armor black as obsidian, his eyes burning the same silver as Lyra's. but colder, harder. Father, she whispered. He looked at her, not with love, but disappointment so deep it cut like a blade. You wear shame well, child, but it suits you poorly. Elias stepped forward, gun raised. She's not your property. Kyle's gaze flicked to him, and in that instant Elias felt the weight of centuries of rule, of galaxies conquered. A human, Kyle murmured. The infection that turned my daughter soft. He raised his hand. Energy flared. Elias was thrown back, crashing against the rock wall. Lyra screamed, running toward him. Stop it, she cried. Please. Kale turned to her, voice like thunder. You beg for mercy from me, yet you side with vermin? You are no longer my blood. Lyra knelt beside Elias, trembling, her tears falling onto his bruised face. You have no right to decide what I am. Kyle's armor pulsed with power. Then prove it. He unleashed another wave of energy, but this time Lyra rose to meet it. The ground beneath her cracked with light as her own power awakened, something long buried beneath fear and obedience. The air filled with brilliant blue fire as daughter met father. Two forces of the same blood colliding like twin stars. Elias shielded his eyes, pain throbbing through every nerve, watching her silhouette blaze brighter and brighter. Kale's voice echoed through the chaos. You would destroy your own kind for this human? Lyra's reply came like a blade of light through shadow. No. I would save myself. Her power surged, not in rage but in grief, in love, in every emotion her father called weakness. And in that eruption of feeling, she shattered his control. The Emperor staggered, his armor cracking, light bleeding from his core. He stared at her, not with anger now, but disbelief. You chose them. Lyra trembled, tears streaming. I chose life. Kale fell to his knees, his own power flickering out. Around them, the fleet above faltered, as if the universe itself hesitated to breathe. Elias struggled to his feet, limping toward her. Lyra! She turned, the glow fading, exhaustion replacing it. Her knees gave out, and he caught her just before she hit the ground. I told you, she whispered weakly. You shouldn't have come. He smiled faintly. Yeah, but I keep my promises. As her father's ship began to retreat, its engines dimming across the sky, Lyra closed her eyes, resting her head against his chest. For the first time in her life, she felt free. And for the first time, Elias realized freedom was never won by strength, but by compassion powerful enough to defy a galaxy. The stars above flickered softly, as though bowing to something greater than conquest, the love of a human, the courage of a princess, the beginning of peace. The silence after battle was almost holy. No gunfire, no thunder, only the soft hum of the desert wind and the faint crackle of cooling metal. The great fleet that had once filled the heavens was gone, retreating into the night like a vanishing storm. The sky above Vega was open again. Elias sat against a piece of scorched hull, one arm wrapped protectively around Lyra. The dawnlight washed across her pale face, turning her silver hair to threads of gold. She was still, eyes closed, her breathing shallow but steady. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek and whispered, It's over. Her lips curved faintly. No, she murmured, voice fragile as starlight. It's only beginning. Elias smiled, weary, battered, but alive. You sound like someone who's planning to rebuild the universe. Lyra opened her eyes then. The glow that once filled them was gentler now, human almost, a quiet fire instead of a storm. Not the universe, she said softly. Just a piece of it. Somewhere it can grow without fear. He looked out toward the horizon. Smoke rose from the remnants of the outpost, curling toward the heavens like prayers. The colony had survived, barely. But people were already moving among the ruins, helping one another, calling names, tending wounds. Humanity, stubborn, unbroken. They're already rebuilding, he said. Lyra followed his gaze, wonder in her expression. Even after all this, they begin again. That's what we do, Elias replied. We fall and we start over. It's kind of our thing. A small laugh escaped her, soft, musical, beautiful. I think that's why I envied your kind, she said. You turn pain into hope. Even in loss, you keep loving. Elias tilted his head. Maybe that's what makes us human. But you learned it faster than most of us ever do. She smiled, though her eyes shimmered with tears. You taught me. Every word you said, every time you refused to run. You showed me what it means to feel without fear. He reached for her hand. Then promise me you'll keep feeling, no matter where you go next. Her fingers intertwined with his, delicate but sure. Only if you promise to keep looking at the stars. He chuckled softly. Deal. The wind carried their voices away, scattering them across the dunes. Later that night, the colony gathered around the remnants of the landing field. The stars above burned clear and countless and untouched by war for the first time in weeks. Lyra stood beside Elias, draped in a shawl made from human cloth, humble yet radiant. The colonists looked at her not with fear now, but with awe. Some whispered prayers, others simple thanks. To them, she was not an alien princess anymore. She was a symbol, the bridge between two species that had once stood oceans apart. Governor Hale stepped forward. On behalf of the Vega outpost, he said solemnly, we owe our survival to both of you. And perhaps the beginning of something greater. Lyra lowered her head in gratitude. If peace is to mean anything, she said softly, it must begin with listening, not to empires but to hearts. The crowd fell silent, moved by her words. Elias looked at her, pride warming the ache in his chest. She was no longer the frightened stranger he had found in the sand. She was something else now. Stronger, freer. When the crowd dispersed, Lyra and Elias remained, watching the night in quiet companionship. Your father will return, he said quietly. Maybe not soon, but someday. I know, she replied. But next time he won't find a girl who runs. He smiled at that. Good, because I'm done chasing. She turned to him, her silver eyes glistening. Then stay. Just for one more sunrise, he nodded. For as many as you want. They stood together beneath the vastness of the stars, human and alien, soldier and princess. No crown, no armor, no fear. Only the heartbeat of two souls that had crossed the impossible and found each other in the wreckage. The wind whispered through the dunes, carrying her voice into eternity. They will never understand why I chose you. Then let them wonder. Elias said gently, some stories aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be felt.